Welcome to the channel. We're going to continue with our beer making. So 2 weeks ago we brewed the beer and it's been fermenting, and we're going to do what they call rack the beer today. So today we're going to transfer the beer to another fermenting bucket, this one right here, and it's going to sit and ferment for another 2 weeks, and then we'll bottle the beer. So let's get the beer out. The magic closet. This is what it looks like. I don't know how well you can see it with the camera, but that is the cruising. It's kind of crazy, huh? So I'm gonna put this up there and we'll siphon it from this bucket to the other fermenting bucket. Why does it feel so heavy? There we go. What a beauty. I've already sanitized this bucket using Star San, and I've sanitized the lid that's going to go on here and the new airlock as well. I've also sanitized the hose that's used for siphoning from this bucket to the new fermenting bucket. Let me say, caveat here, you don't have to do any of this. A lot of people brew the beer, they ferment it for 2 weeks, then they bottle it and let it carbonate for another 2 weeks. So I'm adding another 2 weeks to the process. And you can read online or read books, and there's a debate as to whether or not you should rack it or not. After doing all the reading, I've decided to rack it. I think one of the reasons why they suggest not racking it is that you could introduce bacteria, germs, airborne yeast to it, and you'll get an off flavor to the beer. So, you know, you create some risk by doing this extra process of racking it to another fermenter and letting it ferment for another 2 weeks. But that's what I've chosen to do, and you can totally eliminate this process if you want to. And from the first video that I did when we did brew day, when you use the sanitizer, there's going to be some residual bubbles left over, and they say don't worry about that. I wet a paper towel with the sanitizer and then put it over the top to keep things from getting inside. I've already sanitized the hose and the siphon by running sanitizer through it. Get that down there. Doing this by myself. Hopefully I don't make a huge mess. Miss Victoria is our camera operator today. So I'm going to try the best I can to use this siphon without getting the trub, the sediment that's on the bottom of the fermenting bucket. And it's kind of a pretty golden color. I think it looks pretty good, actually.
It does look nice.
So that's the trick. So I'm trying to suspend the siphon above the bottom of the fermenting bucket to get as little of the trub into the new fermenting bucket. And racking the beer hopefully brings us a clearer beer in the end. And fermenting an extra 2 weeks hopefully gives the beer a little more body. And like I said, hey, it's a personal decision. The books and everything that you read are conflicted as to whether or not you need to rack it. And you definitely can make beer without adding this extra 2 weeks and without racking it to another fermenter like I'm doing. They encourage you to taste this during the process. So I will pour a little off. It's obviously not carbonated, so it'll be totally flat, but you'll have an idea as to what it's going to taste like. So we have about 2.5 gallons in there right now. And the process from here, after I put it back in there and let it ferment for another 2 weeks, then we'll bring it out, we'll put it in a bottling bucket, we'll add some sugar, then we'll put the beer in the bottles, cap the beer, and then over the next 2 weeks, the remaining yeast that is in the bottles will be eating that sugar that we've added, and the byproduct of that will be the CO2, which will carbonate the bottled beer. Getting close to the trub. I want to get as much beer out as I can, but I don't want to pull the trub out. See if I can tilt it a little bit without moving the trub too much. Okay, that's as good as we're going to get. We've got a little less than 5 gallons. I think we managed not to get too much trub. And this is a different lid. I've washed this lid and sanitized it. I've washed and sanitized the airlock. I'm going to get the sanitizer out of there. I'm going to put some water in there. Yeah, so there's a max line on each side. And it bubbled for really almost the whole 2 weeks. It was letting out CO2 through the airlock. It starts out bubbling after about 12 to 24 hours, and then eventually it starts decreasing in frequency in the amount that the airlock bubbles. But it bubbled pretty good for several days, and even all the way up to 2 weeks it was bubbling some, just not that frequently. See what was on the bottom. I definitely prefer my beer cold, but I'm going to draw a little bit off. And like I said, it's not carbonated. Golden color. I think it's going to be good here. Once carbonated.
Yeah, that's good.
That's pretty. You were just paid to say that, though. So we're going to put it back in its little home for 2 more weeks, and then we'll see it again, and we'll carbonate it. All right. We successfully racked it, so we'll let it sit for 2 weeks, and then we'll come back and bottle it. Okay, the process continues. A month ago was brew day. We brewed the beer. Then 2 weeks later, I racked the beer from the first fermenter to another fermenter. Now it's been another 2 weeks, so we're now a month out from brew day. And we're going to bottle today, the fun part. And then 2 weeks from bottling, we can drink the beer. It'll be carbonated. So let me show you what's going on. These are bottles that I've used before in previous batches of beer, and I cleaned them with a bottle brush, then I ran them through the dishwasher, and then I sanitized them by running sanitizer through the bottles. And now they've just been dripping, so the sanitizer drips out. So they're sanitized and ready to go. I have to use a siphon to get the beer out of the second fermenting bucket that I'm using, or it's not a bucket. I used to use buckets and I keep calling them buckets, but it's a fermenting bottle. I have to use that siphon to get the beer out of that into the bottling bucket, or bottling bottle. So that's the process. But the first thing we have to do right now is cook some sugar. So we have 2/3 of a cup of cane sugar and 1 cup of water. And we have to boil that. And that's going to go in with the beer, and it's going to give the yeast that's remaining in the beer something to eat. So when it eats that sugar, it will create CO2, it'll create carbonation. The carbonation won't have anywhere to go because there'll be a cap on the bottle, and so you'll have that nice head of beer when you drink the beer. So I have 1 cup of water, And I have 2/3 of a cup of sugar. And we just have to bring this, I've already made a mess. We just have to bring this to a boil. Let's see what it looks like. Once fermented and once carbonated and cold, I think it's going to be good. So I think we're boiling. Okay, so it's boiling. Now you need to let it cool down. You don't want it real hot when you put it in with the beer. It's going to kill whatever yeast is in the beer.
Mom was meant to be
Okay,
a dancer.
This production has gone south. Now I have not only Arissa, but now her mother in here. And the two of them together is just
Chaos.
a mess. Okay, this is our bottling bottle, because it's not a bucket. This is where we're going to transfer it to. And I have run sanitizer through these hoses. And this side of the sink has been sanitized. There's probably a little bit of sediment on the bottom of this, but not much, I don't think, since we did rack it to this second fermenter. So there wasn't much trub in there because we transferred it to the second fermenting bottle. Okay, so we let the sugar and the water cool down. We're going to add that. And then we're going to gently stir it. Now the reason why that we transferred it from the fermenter to what they call the bottling bucket is to get rid of the trub or the sediment that's on the bottom. So every time you transfer it, hopefully there's less trub, less sediment. So when we bottle it, this is pretty clean. There's not much in there. I think we've managed to transfer it and leave most of it in the fermenting bucket. I mentioned earlier that these bottles are from a batch that I've made before, and I'll put in the description the maker of these labels, but they're washable and they've held up pretty good after a couple of uses and a couple of washes. I know from experience that we make a huge mess doing this, so I've put a towel down to try to get some of the mess. So this bottler has a spring in it and this little pin right here, and when you push the pin down, then it'll release the beer. When you lift it up and it's not touching the bottom of the bottle anymore, it stops dispensing the beer. So we can open up the spigot .
Just near full.
A little more full than that, I think.
Mm. Well, I could see how that would get messy.
Yeah, when it first foams, I think that's when you know.
Mm.
So the bandage on my leg is from being bit by a dog when we were off-roading from Big Bear to Seven Oaks. Watch that video.
Doing great, Mama. You're almost done. 3 bottles left.
We're gonna have to bring in some more bottles because we've got more beer left. Last one. This has been a little messier than normal, I gotta say.
Yeah.
We had the tip come off twice on the bottling wand.
Oh, nice.
A little bit more. All right, I think that's, you want to show how much is left in there?
Yep.
It's got a magnet on there. I always feel like something's going to break when I'm doing one down.
48 to go.
40. Is that we're going to end up with 49?
49. I believe. I can count them again, but.
We're a third of the way done. I don't think I mentioned this before, but in addition to sanitizing the bottles, you have to sanitize the cap too. You just put the caps in a bowl with the sanitizer and let them sit there till you're ready. And then what we do is I put the beer in the bottles, and then Vicky sets a cap on the top until I'm ready to bottle it. That way nothing can get inside the beer while we're, finishing the batch up.
All right, last one.
Last one.
Nice.
Okay, so we're going to put these in boxes, and we're going to put them in a dark place that's around 75 degrees, so it's going to go back in the closet, I think. And the only thing that could go wrong are beer bombs. And, I think that's if you put too much sugar in there, or maybe they're in too hot of a place, and you create too much CO2, and it blows either the top off, or it actually breaks the glass. And apparently the tops are on more secure than the seams are in the glass, so it'll often be the glass itself that explodes and not the top. So that's not happened before, and knock on wood, it won't happen this time. So we'll be back in 2 weeks, and we'll be drinking this beer. Today we drink some beer. 2 weeks ago we bottled the beer, and before we bottled it we primed the beer, which is adding some sugar to the beer so the yeast will have something to eat and create CO2 to carbonate the beer. So the beer's been conditioning for the last 2 weeks, and we're going to open the beer, see if it's carbonated, and see how it tastes. All right, we've got some frosty mugs. Chris, you want to do the honors?
Yes, sir.
Let's see if we get some carbonation.
Is that good? Whee! Last one. Almost died there.
Okay, she's been drinking. That's. How does the head look on that?
Looks very good.
Remember, not the very end of it. When you make your own brew, it's considered a live beer, so there's going to be some yeast on the bottom of the bottle. So it's best not to drink it out of the bottle, best to pour it in a glass and not pour the very end of the beer. Leave a little bit remaining on the bottom of the beer, and that will be the yeast. The longer the beer sits, seems like the harder the yeast gets on the bottom, so it's less likely for the yeast to come out into the glass.
There we go. Looks very good. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. That tastes really good. Yum. Yum, yum.
It's got a little bit of body to it, but
Yeah.
not. Now, for some reason, this one did not seem to be as carbonated. It didn't have as much head as the other two. Did this taste a little flatter?
Tastes like ink
Yes.
steam to me.
Mm-hmm. What do you think? A little
Yeah.
flatter. Mm.
Yeah, so it's been 2 weeks, and they say 2 to 3 weeks on the carbonation, so it might be good for this one to sit at least another week. But I only refrigerate a few at a time, maybe a 6-pack at a time, and I leave the rest in the boxes. So, but it's got a good taste to it, I think.
Yeah, it's really good.
All right, so we're all done. It took us from brew day, which was 6 weeks ago, to drinking today. And you can knock 2 weeks off that if you want to. I fermented an extra 2 weeks, and you don't have to do that. But anyway, it's a lot of fun, actually. You should give it a try. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe. Please give us a thumbs up, and we'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.